Hello and welcome to Human Anatomy Prep. I'm Ty Gardner and I'll be your instructor. Here's a concept map to help us think about tissues. It is intentionally simple, with no specific examples given. Tissues are formed from cells and cell products. There are 4 basic tissue types. I'll spend most of my time talking about epithelial and connective tissue, so let's start with the other 2. Muscular tissue contracts. This includes muscles like the biceps brachii and other muscles that contract involuntarily. There are 3 different kinds of muscular tissue. Skeletal muscle forms what we call muscles. We refer to it as voluntary because we choose to contract it. We'll talk about the structure of skeletal muscle in a later chapter. Smooth and cardiac muscle are referred to as involuntary because we don't choose to contract them. Smooth muscle is found in vessels and organs, while cardiac muscle is found in our heart. Nervous tissue includes neurons that transmit and receive signals, and neuroglia, or glial cells, that support neurons. We'll talk more about neurons and neuroglia in our chapter introducing the nervous system. Epithelial tissue lines and covers. The epidermis of your skin and lining of your intestines are examples. Epithelial tissue is characterized by a number of properties. I'll mention a few. Epithelial tissue shows cellularity. This means it consists mostly of cells with little extracellular material. This is largely true of muscle and nervous tissue too, but completely the opposite of connective tissue. Epithelial tissue shows polarity. The top, apical surface, of the cell is different than that of the bottom, basal surface. A good example of this is tissue where cells have cilia or microvilli, found on the apical surface only. The apical surface of an epithelium isn't attached. It faces a free surface or lumen, the space inside a tube. Epithelial tissue is attached to an underlying connective tissue via a basement membrane. The basement membrane is part epithelial tissue, basal lamina, and part connective tissue, reticular lamina. The names of epithelial tissue are often long, but are easy because they follow some basic rules. One part of the name tells us if the tissue has layers. Simple means one layer of epithelial cells. Stratified means more than one layer. It usually means 2, but the epidermis of the skin has many. Pseudostratified means falsely stratified. There's only one layer, but it looks like more than one layer. Another part of the name describes the shape of the cells. This means the apical cells if it is stratified. Squamous cells are flat. In a simple epithelium, this would allow for easy diffusion of things like oxygen. Cuboidal cells are cube-shaped. They look square from the side. Columnar cells are column-shaped. They are tall and skinny. We'll want to know if they have cilia or microvilli. Combine terms for layers and cell shape, add epithelium, the noun form of epithelial, and we have a name. Simple squamous epithelium is one layer of flat cells. It is found in the alveoli, air sacs, of our lungs. It allows diffusion of oxygen from the lungs into the capillaries, also made of simple squamous epithelium. Ciliated pseudostratified columnar epithelium is one layer, but cells differ in shape so it can look like 2. Like all columnar epithelia, it has goblet cells to produce mucus. It also has cilia, organelles that wave to produce movement, so it can move mucus. Found in our trachea, or windpipe, it traps particles in mucus and moves them to our throat. Connective tissue connects and supports. This includes things like tendons, adipose tissue, fat, and even blood. To understand connective tissue, we must understand the matrix. No, not that matrix. Cells are interspersed in a matrix composed of a usually fluid ground substance and protein fibers. There are three categories of connective tissue, differing in the nature of their matrix. Fluid connective tissue, blood and lymph, obviously has a watery ground substance. In blood, the proteins are called plasma proteins. You'll learn about those when you learn about blood later. Supporting connective tissue, bone and cartilage, has a firm or semi-firm ground substance. Because the matrix is relatively solid, the cells reside in a space in the matrix called a lacuna. Plural equals lacunae. There are three types of cartilage. They differ in the nature of their protein fibers. Hyaline cartilage is smooth and firm. It covers bones at joints and supports our voice box or larynx. Fibrocartilage is tough. It forms our intervertebral discs, menisci, and symphysis pubis. Elastic cartilage stretches and snaps back. It supports our auricle, the external ear flap, and epiglottis. There are two types of bone tissue: cancellous or spongy bone inside, and cortical or compact bone outside. We'll talk more about bone later. Connective tissue proper, for example tendons, is the stuff that tends to connect one tissue to another. Connective tissue proper has a fluid ground substance, but differs in the density and type of protein fibers. For that reason, we break it up into two categories: loose, with few fibers, and dense, with many fibers. Areolar connective tissue, seen above, has few fibers arranged in no particular direction and is free to move. It does things like bind skin to underlying muscles and wrap companion arteries and veins together. Adipose tissue consists mostly of adipocytes, or fat storage cells. It can be used for energy storage or cushioning. Dense regular connective tissue, found in tendons and ligaments, has protein fibers in a single direction. Dense irregular connective tissue, found in the dermis of our skin, has protein fibers in many directions. It turns out you can be very tough in one direction, regular, or less tough in many directions, irregular. There's still a lot more to learn about tissues in your anatomy class. I hope this has been helpful. Your next stop is the video on the integument, commonly referred to as the skin.